man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher. I am running for mayor of New York City. You can follow that journey at Corinne Fisher for Mayor on Instagram. And you can head over to CorinneFisher.com if you want to donate or sign up to volunteer. If you're watching this now, Wednesday, please know we have a critical financial deadline that we are so close to hitting our goal for. The deadline is tomorrow, Thursday, March 13th at midnight Eastern time. If you have been dragging your feet on donating, if it's on your to-do list and you just didn't get around to it yet, now is the time when you, person I'm talking to right now, you U.S. resident only, please, no foreign nationals. When you U.S. resident, your contribution will personally impact the future of democracy. Mike Harrington just donated. And I know it hurt his soul because he doesn't believe. You know what, Mike, that's extra meaningful because I know you don't believe in the Democratic Party, but what you're saying is you believe in me.
Yeah, I don't believe in any politician, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. I believe in Corinne Fisher, though.
Good thing I'm not a politician. Good thing I'm not a politician. I'm just an everyday person who wants to govern the city that she loves, and the city that she lives in. So that's what's happening here. Shout out to Free Vices who play our theme song Wild. Haven't mentioned them in a while. Wanted to give a shout out. Also want to shout out my dictator, Hannah Pendergrass. Always so supportive. Hannah donated. She just told me in the live chat to the Corinne Fisher for Mayor campaign. Again, I'll go through my whole day. I did a long live on my Corinne Fisher for Mayor Instagram earlier today. The first live I've ever done from that account. You know, we'll see how long it takes me to get banned. I was actually concerned because I posted a transparency reel this morning, and I collabed with Without a Country, Corinne Fisher for Mayor, and my OG account, Philanthropy Gal, and it's like not even hit 10K yet. That never happened. To collab with those three accounts with the amount of followers that I have and to be under 10K, literally 12 hours later, I go, oh, great. They're already banning me because of political material. As you see, as we talked about on this show, there is a tab that you have to flick on your settings to say whether or not you get political material. And specifically in that video, I think I used the word like political alliances, petitioning, like a lot of political jargon that might tip off the censors or the algorithm. And I was just like, oh, great. This is 100% not what I need. So just make sure to be engaging with that because it's really all the name of the game right now is fundraising, petitioning, and visibility. That's what we are doing right now. And you know what? If you're not interested in politics and you're one of the male listeners, because this show has a lot of male listeners, you know what? Please donate to Corinne Fisher for Mayor with the same fervor you would have if I started an OnlyFans. I was joking with my fundraising consultant earlier today, and I was like, man, if only some of these people were as excited to donate to my campaign as they would be if I started an OnlyFans. People have been begging me to start an OnlyFans for years. It's never going to happen. I support other people's OnlyFans. You guys know I would never offer men pleasure or satisfaction in that way. Come on. Do you know anything about my branding? Never. A 0% chance of that happening. That being said, I support other women who do it. God bless you. God bless you. I don't have it in me to provide joy like that, but I do have it in my heart and my mind to govern the city of New York. I'm excited to do so. So yeah, shout out to our dictator Hannah Pendergrass, been holding it down for months now. My capitalist pigs, my cuties, love you so much. I know I kind of told people, please concentrate on donating to the campaign this month. And if you were, one of the fortunate people who I called today, thank you so much for matching your donation. I was doing thank you calls and then also, seeing if I could get people to match, because that's what you're doing with the grassroots campaign. It's me, Corinne Fisher, calling you. If you donate to Corinne Fisher, guess who's calling you back? Corinne Fisher. That's what's happening, right? When we talk about impact, this is what's happening. I also want to shout out several drag queens who really assisted in the petitioning process this past week by giving me the mic on their incredible shows for a couple minutes to speak to their audiences and then to get registered Democrats in New York City to sign up. So big shout outs to my homegirl, Vicky DeVille, Izzy Uncut, who's been on this show, and Nikki O, all local drag queens, all so talented and all so supportive of the pursuit of democracy, everyone. I really find that people in the LGBTQIA plus community are, well, first of all, they usually tend to be politically active because I think they, more so than other people, understand what it's like to have to fight for your rights, to have to ensure that the government isn't taking advantage of you. A lot of us have never had to fight that fight, luckily, but it shows in the way that we show up to the polls or that we show up in politics, in that we don't, because it's never really, directly affected our lives. And so maybe we haven't paid attention before, but we're in a time now in America where it is imminent that at some point soon, whether or not you want to care, you're going to be forced to care, because some right or some access to something you've taken for granted is going to be taken away from you, and then you'll notice. And I guess my call to action here is don't let it get to that before you become politically active. And this is outside of my own campaign. Obviously, I'm trying to get you riled up, but I would be, me, I'd be trying to get you riled up either way. Not exhausted, not needing to take a bath for self-care. Just be aware, keep tabs on this shit, right? We just shouldn't wait till it's our rights that are being taken away before we step in, right? That's not what community is about. And that should go for if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, whatever it is you are. That's something that I would hope all people stand for. When you see something that you feel is an injustice, an injustice looks different to everyone. There's a larger conversation. I know to many Republicans, injustice looks like trans women playing sports with cis women. I know that. I understand that. And so that's why I go, okay, I don't think that, I think they think this is, it's truly an injustice. Or people who are anti-choice. I think in their heart, possibly, depending, I think some people want to have control over women's bodies, but I think there are some people who truly think a murder is happening and it's an injustice and they need to stop it. And I understand that, right? So, just be aware that whatever injustice is to you, don't wait till it comes knocking on your door. All right. So mayor update. Yeah. Right now, I'm in the part of the campaign where I'm basically doing fundraising, comms, which I talked about on my live, which is just a short word for communications, which means publicity, press. That's what you would, it's just the political version of press, what I would call an entertainment press. And then, we're still petitioning until April 3rd. And just, I'm really deep into fundraising now. Fundraising, please know, if I'm annoying you asking for money, I'm annoying me more. And a lot of people on my team don't agree with the process that we are in right now as far as how capitalistic fundraising is. People on my team, we've talked about it, we acknowledge it. But you can't change everything overnight. And so we have to play by some of these rules to be seen. And then, when me and candidates like me start getting elected into office more frequently, those things can change because we will have power to change them. Just as Donald Trump might be trying to get a third term into presidency, I would also like to adjust government, but to make it more fair and more accessible to everyday people. And I don't think that you should have to be rich to run for office. I think that's, exactly why we're in the position that we're in. Yeah, and then there's just been a lot of crying. I feel like I've cried more during this mayoral race than any other time. Not because I'm sad or I got first of all, I'm on very little sleep, so I always cry a lot when I don't get enough sleep. It's just my body's natural reaction, but more so because a lot of parts of this process have angered me. And I'm crying because I'm like, oh man, I'm really glad that I did this first, so that I didn't push anyone else to be in this position, right? I would have felt guilty, I think, if I had pushed someone else. Not that I was pushing, but I was offering on the table for a long time to support especially young female candidates who wanted to run for office. And I think it's a different game depending on where you live. New York City is the most barbaric place to run for municipal office. That's goes without saying. But it really is a bloodbath, and that makes me sad for other people who want to run for office, but I don't want it to dissuade you from running for office. If you're interested, I really hope that you're keeping track of the things I say, and after, whenever, in 8 years when I'm done being mayor, please email me, because I'd be happy to tell you everything in depth that I've learned throughout this process to help you and guide you through you ultimately running for office. That's part of what I wanted to do. And of course, when I'm mayor, I'm going to have a huge, it'll have to be citywide because that's what the funds are allocated for. I can't be making it national, but hopefully, a lot of times when one major city introduces a program, other cities will follow. And I've certainly looked to other major cities for policies that I would like to implement here in New York City. And so one of the main things I want to do is I want to introduce a program that teaches young people how to run for office, and not to showboat, not some kind of performative, look at me, I'm the mayor, look how great I am, interacting with children, smiling for a camera. That really, truly takes kids, and I think it would be best but a program for high school kids, but it takes high school kids who have political interest or interest in, activism, and it shows them the steps that they need to take and things that they need to do to be a candidate, whether that's a candidate of a political party or running independently with their own platform. Or maybe it's someone who wants to, who will one day start a political party that we've never heard of before. Maybe that young person is in high school right now, and they're going to be the person to develop this new political party that we're not yet aware of that will change the two-party system forever. Maybe it's that person. But whoever it is, I want a mentorship program in New York City, because we tell kids that they can be president, and then we give them absolutely no tools to do so. Not in Corinne Fisher's New York City. Knowledge is power. As the daughter of a teacher and just someone who loves school and learning and, takes master classes in my free time because I'm a dork, that's the most important thing, that no matter what race, religion, sex, socioeconomic, thing you're born into, you should have access to information. You should always know how to do something, or how to get somewhere, or who to talk to. That should not be something that's pay to play, and I hate that it is. And I've been thinking about this a lot, as far as kind of unorthodox candidates. I'm an unorthodox candidate, but we also see, when we see these people like AOC rise to the top seemingly out of nowhere. And I know we've talked about that on the show before briefly, that she didn't come out of nowhere. She had an endorsement from a group that, specifically targets what I would call in the entertainment business like a developmental client. So this happens in the entertainment business too. And I think I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. like there's developmental clients in the entertainment business. So comedians, for instance, like all the comedians who you see who have Netflix specials, there's a bunch of people who are just really famous comedians, right? And Tom Segura or something like that. People who have amassed a following on their own through podcasting or TV, whatever medium they used, they have amassed their own following. And so obviously Netflix or whoever is going to give them a comedy special. But then there are the other comedians on Netflix, and I'm not going to name names, who are just developmental clients, basically, that have been handpicked by producers at Netflix or Comedy Central, whatever it is. And whether or not you know it as the consumer, you have been fed these people. They present it in a way where you think you discovered them, but they've been pumping thousands, if not millions of dollars into these developmental clients for years to make you think that you discovered them, to make you think that they came out of nowhere. But they're deciding a lot. There's 50%, of the comics are truly coming from nowhere and the fans are deciding. And then the other 50% are people who are placed in areas where you will find them. Okay, let's put it that way. And so just like that's happening in the entertainment business, same exact thing is happening in politics. And I didn't really realize that until, past couple of years when I started really, reading into this story of AOC. And again, this is not anything against AOC. It's not to say that I think she's a really charismatic leader, and I think she's done a lot for the country, and I think she's gotten people excited about politics again, and certainly about the Democratic Party. And gosh, we needed that. But the notion that she came from nowhere is misleading, especially to young people or even middle-aged people like myself who want to run for office, because there was support there. And specifically, there's been a lot of support from the Democratic Socialists, right? Which Democratic Socialists always run on the Democratic ticket. I would argue, however, they should be running on their own ticket, the Socialist ticket. The Socialists, they should be running with the Socialist Party. And I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to basically gain steam from, running Democratic, and then eventually will branch off into this third party. And again, I agree. I think we need more parties. The two-party system is not working. There should be more choices, but it's just interesting to me what's happening. And so the Democratic Socialists, especially here in New York City, and we see them in city council and stuff, they're basically creating this set of superstars, and they've been really successful with this. One of them is running for mayor, actually. But it's just interesting to me because a lot of times these candidates will position themselves or tell the public, like, I'm grassroots, I'm completely independent. It's like, well, okay, you're grassroots in that you're not being, funded by developers and, and stuff like that. But you're backed by an entire party and there's no competition because you're the only Democratic Socialist. So that's the unclear messaging there. They have huge mailing lists and stacked, they're stacked with volunteers and they're funded. So to say you're just coming from nowhere is just a little bit misleading, and I don't like that. And I found a blog from the Democratic Socialists actually talking about AOC, and I thought it was very interesting because, I guess this person's gripe is that the Democratic Socialists positioned her to be the political superstar she is now, and this person feels like she's not really promoting them or supporting them. Although I would argue, I think she supports their viewpoints a lot, and if she's not talking about them anymore, perhaps it's just because she feels it in her heart, which to me is more authentic. Again, I don't know. So this is from dsausa.org. The top of it is called the title is called I Miss the Old AOC by Orrin Schweitzer. And this is this is not like super current, I don't think. Yeah, this is from June of last year. But again, I think it's appropriate to read on this show and in the moment, especially with everything that I'm personally going through. Like I'm going through something. I'm running for mayor. I'm not going through anything. I did this to myself. So it said this article continues a current debate within DSA over whether or not to re-endorse AOC in her 2024 re-election campaign. Other articles in this series include one arguing in favor of and one against endorsement. So this is the one I came across. We'll read this one. If you want to read the other ones, that's up to you. I don't want to do a whole show on AOC's, endorsement that's, already passed. But another issue I have, and I find this in many endorsements, because there's an endorsement process with a bunch of different, interest groups and stuff that you can fill out while running for mayor. And I filled out some, but, the language in these endorsement questionnaires is very much kind of like, if you don't believe this laundry list of things that we believe, we will not endorse you. And you have to check off and sign that you will uphold these values, which I get. You want to make sure that someone's not going to go crazy once you endorse them. But it just, to me, feels a little bit rigid, right? If we want a new form, every candidate should be unique. And a lot of times, the kinds of endorsements I'm asking for things like, I don't know, like Eleanor's legacy, which is just like basically like pro-choice women and in government. And things where, yeah, of course, I'm going to do everything to, advocate for women who want to get an abortion and the pro-choice. I'm fully pro-choice in every way. So that's not a problem. But it does bother me the rigidity with which they present these things. And again, it really comes like it's written, and this is not specific to Eleanor's legacy. I actually thought their endorsement questionnaire was fine. This is more directed at other places. Some of them I go, am I signing up for a cult or am I asking for an endorsement here? And so that's kind of what this democratic socialist thing is giving me. And so, while I agree with a lot of the values of the democratic socialists, I do think it's like, well, if socialism is so strong, then just create a third party, because that's what we really need for change. So it's like, are you about change or are you about winning and you realize it's easier to win through the Democratic Party? I don't know. That's the question I have. And I just think that it's not like, it's why are we replacing one cult with another? That's I've talked about this before, this cult-like behavior in the following of AOC, the putting her on the tote bags and stuff. Like, something about that bothers me. And so I think it's possibly good that she has maybe separated herself. Maybe she realizes this herself anyway. I'm fascinated by AOC. I really am. I think her story is really interesting, and that's why I read about it a lot. So in 2016, Kanye West released The Life of Pablo, his much anticipated 7th studio album. The 9th track, I Love Kanye, opens with I Miss the Old Kanye, straight from the Go Kanye, Chop Up the Soul Kanye, Set on His Goals Kanye, a tongue-in-cheek response to fans who believe Kanye to have changed since he first burst onto the scene, expressing nostalgia for the old Kanye. I mean, okay, he also has a severe mental illness. Just 2 years later, something dramatic fundamentally changed American politics. A bartender from the Bronx she was working in nonprofit, running as an open democratic socialist on a platform of Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and abolishing ICE, shocked the world by winning a primary against Joe Crowley, the second most powerful Democrat in Congress. I miss the old AOC. And if you haven't watched it, you can watch her go through that in the Netflix documentary Knock Down the House. I don't know if it's still streaming for free, but you can find it somewhere. I think it's still on Netflix, yeah. Knock Down the House. It chronicles her journey for winning that election, and it's really, really interesting and really inspiring. There's other candidates who they follow as well, but who have the same endorsement that I keep talking about, but they don't end up winning their. Oh, sorry. I mean, I guess they don't end up. Spoiler: they don't end up winning their elections, but they give it the old college try. So this is called. So this section says, "Straight from the Go, AOC." As a politically conscious high schooler, I was inspired by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's dark horse victory. I had been a progressive Democrat, quickly losing faith in the party's commitment to social justice and ability to defeat the far right. I became intrigued by DSA, began consuming left-wing media, and got involved in a local DSA race in Brooklyn, Julia Salazar's insurgent campaign against corporate Democrat Martin Dillon. The campaign felt like a grassroots social movement run top to bottom by DSA members with a class struggle message of workers versus capitalists and tenants versus landlords. I joined DSA a couple weeks into volunteering for the campaign. We won our race. Ocasio-Cortez was sworn into office and started her term by joining the Sunrise Movement to stage a sit-in of Nancy Pelosi's office to demand a Green New Deal. I was once again inspired. I had cast my lot with the team that had sent a radical outsider into the halls of Congress who is not going to play by the traditional elite rules. 5 years later, Ocasio-Cortez feels like a completely different political actor. No longer the outsider in the House, she has transformed into a bridge between establishment politicians on the inside and social movements on the outside. While radical working class movements have demanded an answer to the question, which side are you on, for nearly 100 years, Ocasio-Cortez has attempted to straddle both sides. Well, when you're a bridge, you kind of have to, right? Like, this reminds me of comedy when, like, it's like, are you a club comic or are you an alt comic? And for a long time, I was both because I think there was good work to be done in both places. Her theory of change is that to get things done, she has to play the insider game and build close relationships with some leading Democrats. This transformation has led to a series of missteps, increasingly drawing her away from the movements that she was elected to serve, voting to break the rail strike while providing political cover for the president breaking it, voting present on funding for the Iron Dome and indicating she'd vote yes on future funding, donating hundreds of thousands to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, DCCC, and most notably uncritically supporting Biden's reelection and making the rounds on media circuits to boost his candidacy while actively working to lower her supporters' expectations of politicians. It has been incredibly demoralizing for me and many other DSA members who joined because of her. Well, I mean, in her defense, I would think at that time it was either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I mean, unless you wanted her to run against Biden on her, as an independent or something. I'm not, she's extremely powerful, but she doesn't run the whole government, As DSA debates re-endorsing Ocasio-Cortez, I can't help but feel like those Kanye fans in the mid-2010s, a nostalgia for the old AOC. And this is the problem, okay? So it's like you think that you are nostalgic for someone who is like completely thinking for themselves, and I just don't think that was true. I think you're just nostalgic for the Democratic Socialist Party, and now she's a little bit more of a plain old Democrat because that's the party that she's actually in rather than the party that pushed her into the spotlight. Just read a little bit more about you can see there's a lot going on with how they're placing developmental candidates in different. And I'm not I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. I'm just saying this is what it is. It's that version of Ocasio-Cortez that DSA should endorse. It's unclear if the old Ocasio-Cortez still exists or if she ever really did. It's even more unclear if she can be brought back. I mean, how about you let her decide her own fate, It doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but we also should not keep her within the DSA fold by abandoning key socialist principles and strategies for building long-term independent working class power. Well, this is the problem when you start something called the Democratic Socialists instead of just the Socialists, right? Because you're injecting socialism into the Democratic Party, and you're hoping that these few people that you place are going to overpower the party. And I just have confidence in being a socialist and make it the Socialist Party. That's what you do. If you really, there's power in that. It is possible.
Yeah, but isn't the Democratic Party is the party of progressives?
Yes.
And if they,
but I think with what we've seen right now is there is a lot more room to go way further left. So that the socialists should fill that gap. It's needed. I really believe it's needed, but it needs to be its own party so that it can shine. So that party can shine. That's just that's what I think would work. I think it just wouldn't work fast enough, right? And everyone's so impatient. And I get it. Impatient for change. I get it, you know? But I think that's the real strength there. If you want to, it's like, do you want to just position people and infiltrate an existing party, or believe, you know, if you love socialism and you believe in it as much as you're telling us we should believe in it, make it its own party. Needed. Set on her own goals, AOC, I want DSA to be able to re-endorse Ocasio-Cortez, but also find most of the arguments for re-endorsement unconvincing. The pro-endorsement side seems to have a desire to endorse at all costs rather than a strategic discussion of under which conditions we should endorse or not, and what we would like to see from Ocasio-Cortez in order to receive the endorsement. So, like, this is what my problem is. It's like, I understand she's a public servant elected by the people, but it's like, okay, well, if you guys have this like specific list of demands, maybe you should just run for office. Person writing this article. For instance, it would be great if you have to elect people and generally agree with their platform, but also agree that if left to their own devices, you know, which they ultimately will be, they're elected by you, but they still have to be governing based on what they feel is right in their heart, listening to the people. But I would trust less if AOC was just doing exactly, if you guys just emailed her a list of demands, then she's merely a vessel. And then why did we elect a human being? We could have just elected a robot.
No, that's what they're supposed to be.
No.
They're supposed to be a vessel for the constituency. They are not supposed to make decisions to increase their own political careers or the advancement of the party.
I
agree.
agree.
They're supposed to do the will of the constituency.
I agree, but not blindly. You have to be you can't just email a list of demands and every single thing from that party specifically, because these politicians are gonna know things that the constituents do not know. And so I don't think it should be a vessel. A vessel is mindless. It should be exactly how they explained her earlier, a bridge. I mean, a human bridge. But not just a list of demands from this party, because this party has also created, you know, these are not just constituents. This is a group that has organized and mobilized. These are not just everyday residents. So it's the same thing happening over and over again. It's like, that's my problem. These specific groups are doing all the things that they hate when other people do them, and they're just doing them again.
Fair enough.
But I understand what you're saying. Yes, they also, elected officials also shouldn't be doing things for their own personal gain and just to head up the rungs of a ladder. That's also a problem. I think they're both problems. In contrast, Ocasio-Cortez has regularly gone on the news to shame people upset at Biden into voting for him by overplaying his successes and downplaying his crimes, and has even appeared in videos standing side by side and laughing with Biden. Okay, I mean, this is a little nitpicky. She can't share a joke with my man. Organization has taken the position that Biden is not only aiding and abetting a genocide, but is an active participant and co-conspirator. Not only has Ocasio-Cortez's actions been a moral failure, but a massive strategic misstep, according to her own logic, that her endorsement of Biden is necessary to defeat the far right, which is my assessment of it. Not only has Biden adopted codified many of those far right policies, most recently Trump's xenophobic approach to the border and immigration, but his unprecedented unpopularity makes him uniquely weak against Trump compared to down-ballot Democrats who are faring much better in their races against Republicans. I wouldn't say his unpopularity is unprecedented. Plenty of presidents tank in the polls. The raw numbers point to the fact that the best thing Ocasio-Cortez could do to help defeat Trump would be to call for Biden's removal as nominee, since other Democrats would likely fare better in the general election. But her desire to defeat the far right has been dramatically warped by her commitment to staying in the good graces of the Democratic establishment. I mean, I think there is also some play here, right? You know, for get concerned, like, it's like you can't fight every single battle, like, if you want to win the war. And again, like, I think she's made great strides in politics, but like, you can't expect one person to change that's like unfair. Asking her to single-handedly change the entire political system. I think she's I think she's changed a lot. And the idea,
Hold on, not
Yeah.
falling in line
yeah,
with a very clear oligarchy deciding that the president can't be the president should be shot up with whatever we can do to make him conscious for a couple of hours and trot him out there.
but the people ultimately decided that that we didn't want him, and so everything turned out. I mean, everything didn't turn out fine.
The people decided?
What? I mean, yes, the people didn't decide on Kamala, but the people decided not Joe by constantly complaining.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, look, if this was as bad as it's like clearly been in post, I think any Democrat with a spine who stood up and said, this is insane that we're trotting this man out would look a lot better almost a year after this was written. No?
And yes, I think if she was one of the front, but like, to expect someone to be an outlier on almost every decision that the party that she is representing, I think is just unfair. I think a lot of times we do just we should hold our politicians to high standards, but I also kind of think even if you were presented with like a great politician, even if Bernie, like so many people want to get elected, ultimately get elected, they would end up not liking him either. I almost think it's better for these people to get a lot of followers, but then ultimately not be elected to the highest office that they are seeking, because it's almost always a lose-lose. That's what I think.
Hang out, keep cashing those checks.
I mean, I thought you liked Bernie.
No, I mean, I don't like any politician.
Okay.
Literally anyone. They're all guilty of taking blood money.
And because I think we wouldn't know their names if they didn't, and that's a problem. But her desire to defeat the far right has been dramatically warped by her commitment to staying in the good graces of the Democratic establishment and the ideologies she is surrounded by in Washington, D.C. If we endorse her and then choose to take a clear position on Biden dropping out, what will happen when our most well-known politician actively and publicly opposes an important political intervention or organization could make in the 2024 election? It's not that hard to imagine given her public pushback against criticism of Biden. Some arguments in favor of uncritically endorsing Ocasio-Cortez reference her popularity and how DSA can benefit from it. So again, it's not constituents benefiting from it. It's this other organization benefiting from it. That's the issue I have. There are some clear positive examples of this, with her campaign successfully turning out volunteers and supporters for DSA-endorsed candidates like Claire Valdez in Queens. That should be the basic norm and expectation for endorsed candidates, but she is currently failing to meet that standard by notably not endorsing the Ian Huntley campaign, likely in order to stay within the good graces of Democratic House Leader Hakeem Jeffries. There are clear benefits to being connected to her high profile, but there are also major drawbacks. At once we be associated with a high-profile champion of left-wing priorities and also a high-profile booster of the Biden candidacy and the Democratic Party. How could we institutionally advocate members donate to her campaign when there's a good chance it could be sent to the DCCC, a major enemy of the left and working-class movements, and the movement for Palestine? Our endorsement of Ocasio-Cortez could just as easily tar our organization among the pro-Palestine movement as she continues to boost the re-election campaign of Genocide Joe. I, however, would like us to be associated with the Ocasio-Cortez who sat in Pelosi's office. And now I look and look around, and there's so many Democratic socialists. Throughout this discussion period, there have been multiple extended threads on the member-only forum debating the endorsement. Many comments have suggested an endorsement on the condition that Ocasio-Cortez commit to a combination of the following. Okay. Publicly opposing U.S. government spending on Israel, military or otherwise, publicly supporting the boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS movement, withdrawing her endorsement of Biden for president due to his active support of the genocide in Gaza, refusing to speak at the DNC this year, refusing to continue platforming Zionists, agreeing to collaborate with the DSA on developing a federal SIO at the national level alongside our other federal electeds and committing to regular meetings, designating an official staff liaison for communications with DSA's NPC, making no further donations to the DCCC or affiliated fundraisers for the DNC, regularly promoting recruitment to DSA on her comms channels. That last one is psychotic, I think. Recruitment, stop. That one's crazy. While some combination of these conditions are reasonable, there's no evidence she will agree to any conditions. This is a hostage situation, much less multiple, which is a point in favor of those skeptical of an endorsement. We also just don't fully know where her office stands on all of these questions, especially in the context of an endorsement process. We have no insight into what Ocasio-Cortez is willing to agree to, and that should be clear before we agree to endorsing her. For members in the NPC to have a real discussion, debate, and vote on an Ocasio-Cortez re-endorsement, we need recorded answers. The NPC must either issue a questionnaire, meet with her in her office, possibly open for members to observe, host a national town hall with her, or some combination of these to get direct answers on these kinds of questions. And I mean, please, this is someone who's always going live, who's always talking to the people. Ocasio-Cortez's responses must be made available and accessible to members to inform our debates and discussions so we do not have to rely on guesswork and secondhand information. Following these debates and discussions, the NPC can choose between a series of options rather than a simple yes or no on re-endorsement. Some other options could include an endorsement conditional on agreeing to specific stipulations. Another might be granting the endorsement without an agreement on conditions, but public red lines, the crossing of which would trigger revoking the endorsement. Of course, some may still advocate no endorsement whatsoever, while others may advocate an endorsement without conditions. Different factions and members in the organization who may agree on the side of a conditional endorsement may also disagree on what exactly those conditions should be. The ideal outcome would be to establish a certain level of conditions acceptable to both a majority of members and to Ocasio-Cortez herself. It would be an endorsement of the old AOC, or at the very least, a version committed to moving in that direction. If such an agreement cannot be reached, or if Ocasio-Cortez violates endorsement terms, it will not be us abandoning her, but her own failure to return to her roots that inspired so many of us in 2018. If Ocasio-Cortez inspired, or laundry list of things that she was told she had to do if she wanted support from the Democratic Socialists. Be clear here. If you're very clear in what you want AOC to do, please be very clear in the steps that you took to get her there. If Ocasio-Cortez rejects a conditional endorsement or crosses red lines established in the endorsement, while unfortunate, it would be by no means the end of the world. Throughout the country, DSA members are engaged in all kinds of exciting and important work to build independent working class power, including much of our electoral work. More and more DSA are running for office, and there are shining lights of class struggle elected officials like Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, and many more on a state and local level. I hope Ocasio-Cortez would want to be a part of this movement, but it will continue with or without her. So you'll also hear a lot of Democratic socialists saying be part of the movement, which just as a line bothers me because it sounds like something that one of these ladies in these love cults would say in a Netflix documentary. Again, this is not against the DSA. I really do agree with a lot of the things that they want for people, but it is the cult-like messaging and this positioning of people that you think are coming from that you think are just everyday people, but who are really being positioned and have an entire third party backing them. I just want to make you aware of that because these people will, they'll show up at protests and stuff all the time in New York City. They have their own gazette that they hand out, that they print themselves. Again, all these things are fine and great. And there's certainly plenty of materials that Republicans and Democrats hand out. But it just worries me when something new comes along and we go, this organized group is so much better. That's what I have it, because there's still an agenda there, right? My hope is that we can have a government that doesn't have this agenda, right? You want goals, not an agenda that you're at gunpoint, that you have to follow through with this. again, just like kind of a cult warning I have because I've been seeing it a lot and kind of been tracing it and tracing the movement of some of these people, and I go, and also the behavior of the people in it feels cult-like, right? You know, I always tell you guys when you're watching this show, like, I hope you don't agree with everything I say. And if you find yourself starting to agree with everything I say, take a step back. And I would say, you know, listen to someone else speak, or read some articles and like write down your own thoughts about them independent of this show. Like, I really, really mean that. I don't want you to agree with everything I say. I'm my own person and you're your own person. I just want us to have common goals that are like, you know, and they can be loose, right? Like, people shouldn't be unhoused. People shouldn't be without medical care. You know, art should be for everyone. Everyone should have the chance at a good public education, no matter what background they're from. You know, that's these loose goals, and then how we get there, we work on together. And I mean everyone, Republicans included. All right, let's move on right now to the week in Trump. I can do a quick summary from the New York Times. Trump administration highlights car makers get month-long reprieve from tariffs, where things stand right now. The auto tariff pause. The Trump administration said today that it would allow car makers to escape the tariffs imposed on all goods from Canada and Mexico for 1 month. The announcement came a day after President Trump imposed blanket 25% tariffs on all products entering the United States from those countries. The reprieve came after the president spoke with top officials at General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. More VA cuts planned. The Veterans Affairs Department is planning to reduce its workforce by more than 80,000 people, a major escalation of the downsizing efforts at the department that have already prompted pushback from Democrats and some Republicans. In announcing the cuts, Doug Collins, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, said that health care services and benefits would not be cut. Meanwhile, a judge ordered that nearly 6,000 Agriculture Department workers be reinstated. I am a pacifist. That being said, if someone put their life on the line for the country and then is treated like shit by the government, absolutely not. What a slap in the face. Absolutely not. Foreign aid ruling. The Supreme Court rejected Mr. Trump's emergency request to freeze nearly $2 billion in foreign aid, saying a lower court judge should clarify what obligations the government must fulfill. Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined the 3 liberal justices in a 5-4 vote. The case focuses on the U.S. Agency for International Development and aid the administration halted on Mr. Trump's first day in office. So that's just a little bit. There's a lot of things floating around. I don't want to talk about all our time. We spent all our time on what Trump did or undid this week. All right, what do I want to get into now? Mahmoud Khalil is our main story this week. I know sometimes we do a main story, sometimes we don't. I think there's so many interesting perspectives on this story. And I've just, heard this is an instance, obviously, because it is, attached to Palestine and Israel. There's a lot of opinions, and they're all very angry. And I think this is like the perfect example of a main story on Without a Country. So let's just get right into that, I think. So I have a left perspective, a center perspective, a right perspective, and for you New Yorkers, a treat, an Eric Adams perspective. It's just like a line, but he's out of his fucking gourd. So this is from Mother Jones. This is the left perspective, the many misrepresentations of Mahmoud Khalil. I talked with Columbia student activists. Here's what they said about Khalil and what politicians are getting wrong. This is by Sophie Hurwitz. Early this week, as Columbia students scrambled to respond to the United States government's arrest of recent graduate Mahmoud Khalil, a series of logistical hurdles emerged. What would the protesters do if approached by police? What did the fine print of Columbia's recently updated public events policy say? What should the group tell the media? As one student told me, there was a grim humor amid the discussion. Shit, they thought. Each time an obstacle came up, Mahmoud would have known what to do. Khalil, according to the many student protesters I spoke with, was an anchor for the movement, though again, the movement. Though he reportedly did not participate directly in, but you can use the movement in many ways, but it's I don't know if they're using it that way. Did not participate directly in the Columbia encampment. Rather, he was a spokesperson and a mediator as the group navigated a tumultuous spring of protests. Khalil always seemed to know how to move forward calmly under pressure. Politicians and outsiders have painted a different and more sinister picture of Khalil, who is Palestinian, labeling him as aligned with terrorists and in need of deportation, right? And so I think that's the conversation here. People are saying, if we can, deport him, we can deport anyone. Yeah, my ears perked up. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Of course. And, if the consensus is that he was protesting peacefully, I don't fucking care what you're protesting or how much I agree or disagree with what you're doing. If you're doing it peacefully, yeah, that's what America is about. You could say whatever you want to say in your protest. But if you're locking janitors in closets and not allowing students to go get into the classes that they paid for and stopping their access to information, well, now we're in the danger zone. So what's the truth? Well, we'll find out. On the evening of March 8th, plainclothes Department of Homeland Security officers, including one who was given a shout-out at President Donald Trump's inauguration, as Drop Site News reported, stopped Khalil outside his home, detained him in front of his 8-month pregnant wife, and without presenting a warrant, took him away. In legal filings, Khalil's lawyer said his wife was not told where her husband would be taken. I mean, that's some ice shit if I ever heard. Federal agents told him that they were there to revoke his student visa, according to his lawyers. When Khalil told the officers he is a legal permanent resident with a green card, they told him they would revoke that instead. My husband was kidnapped from our home, and it's shameful that the U.S. government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of the people, Khalil's wife said in a statement delivered Wednesday. His disappearance has devastated our lives. Every day without him is filled with uncertainty, not just for me, but for our entire family and community. And so, at the very least, when I initially heard this story, I go, well, if he's a legal permanent resident, if he's going to be detained, he at least has to be able to go through due process, like the, American legal system. But if they're treating him like someone who does not have the same rights as someone who is born here, like we talked with the immigration lawyer several weeks ago, it's like, are they trying to deport him before he even goes through that due process? That's what I was like, that's fishy. At noon on Tuesday, March 11th, Columbia students and faculty staged a sit-in on the Low Library steps, demanding that ICE leave Columbia's campus and return their friend. Within 10 minutes, public safety officers had the area fenced off as helicopters hovered overhead. It was a different campus from 1 year ago. Nearly every green space was fenced in, and almost no outsiders were allowed through Columbia's gates. Because usually, if you're not familiar with Columbia University campus, like me, I don't go to Columbia, never went to Columbia, but there's gates, and it's really beautiful campus, and you can just walk through if you're uptown. And sometimes I have just walked around because it's really pretty. At the protest, a student named, and they have concerts and stuff sometimes that the public can go to. At the protest, a student named Carly, a classmate of Khalil's from Columbia's School of International and Professional Studies, said the detained graduate's friends know him as someone who wants to help others, even when that means making himself a target. He has really gone above and beyond to protect his peers and protect those around him in a way that has even directly harmed him, Carly said. During last spring's protest, when Columbia University admin threatened student safety, Mahmoud served as a mitigator mitigator to protect students, which also made him more directly targeted. Absolutely. Joseph Howley, a classics professor at Columbia, has known Khalil for a year. The professor had grown to rely on Khalil, he said. Throughout the year, I came to realize that Mahmoud is someone you can always count on to get a straight answer and to talk you through a difficult situation, Howley said. Last year, anytime I had a question about what someone was doing or concerns about something in the protest movement and wanted to get some facts checked, I could always call Mahmoud and get a straight answer. So I love that he's known as a straight shooter. That being said, if for any question you have about anything, you're going to one source, whether that be one media source, one podcast source, one person source, alarm, 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 ask multiple people. Again, I'm doing both sides here on my show. Carly, who wore a Magen David necklace and a large heart-shaped necklace with the word Palestine, said that as a Jewish Columbia student, she felt her supposed safety was being used as a pretext for arresting her friend. The evening that Mahmoud was taken from his university-owned apartment, Carly said she was messaging back and forth with him about how to keep other students safe from deportation threats. And see, this reminds me a lot of times of when sexual assaults and rapes will happen on college campuses, how we often forget that college campuses really are their own worlds and have their own laws. And so specifically that says his university-owned apartment, I don't know if you guys have ever lived on a college campus. I lived on a college campus, and I mean, it's not like living on your own. It's very much owned by the college. Anytime I had a guest, I had to sign him in and out. I'm saying him because it was just like my boyfriend. But I would have to sign him in and out, and the security guard would have to sign it, and I would have to get one of my roommates to sign it if he wanted to stay overnight. So there's different rules when you're living on college campuses. The night of his detainment, there was a call to action among students about how we can help with this threat from ICE, she remembered. Mahmoud was one of the first people to respond and ask, how can I help? Hours later, he was arrested. These descriptions of Khalil stand in stark contrast to how politicians have spoken of him. President Donald Trump took credit for the arrest. His administration has promised many more to come. Border czar Tom Homan called Khalil a national security threat. And I would say, if you are saying that, you better present us with a lot of information to back that up in court, right? Okay, show me. And asserted that he violated free speech limits. Homan said on Fox News that they were absolutely allowed to deport Khalil. Okay, I'd like some backup information on that. Even Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, in condemning Khalil's arrest, still made time to equivocate by prefacing his statement by declaring, I abhor many of the opinions and policies that Mahmoud Khalil holds and supports. Though the senator did not say what those opinions might be. I'm guessing he said things that Senator Chuck Schumer, who is, yes, in fact, related to Amy Schumer and is Jewish, has, I'm guessing, some of the things he felt were anti-Semitic. But this is, to me, like a true defender of rights. So, and this is how I feel, right? So, and that's not how I specifically feel about Mahmoud Khalil. I haven't read about all his personal thoughts yet. I haven't read any of his blogs. But in talking about the case, this is how I think people should govern, right? And this is how America should be. Whether or not you agree with someone's viewpoints, if you believe that something unjust was done by him being detained, even though you do agree and even disagree, and even though you do find a lot of the things that this person says, you think they're bad, if you think he is generally abiding by the rules of free speech and protest that are allowed in this country, this is a fine statement to make. I think that's great. I think that tells me okay, you can say that this shouldn't have happened, but then also just make it clear that that doesn't mean you're defending what he said. You're defending his right to say it. And those are two really different things. House Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, New York, similarly asserted that Khalil created an unacceptable, hostile academic environment for Jewish students and others before calling on DHS to stop his deportation. And that's the thing that to me is so cloudy, right? Because you see some footage and read some stories, and it does look like they're locking staff out of hallways and places these people just need access to do their jobs. They're locking janitors in closets and stuff. Or as I said, stopping students who want to access their classes from accessing their classes. That's not okay. That's not okay. But if they are just taking up space to share what they think is a global injustice and a genocide, go for it. You have to remember, though, Colombia it's a private institution. So it has public funding, but it's a private institution. So this is like twofold, which is why like it can still run without the federal funding that Donald Trump took away. But like that's why there's different rules for like housing on campus and why they can be like, we're going to put these gates up now and the public can't come through.
That also, I mean, the fact that they are now 100% working off of endowment means that they are beholden to some of their wealthiest contributors, and who knows where they stand on the conflict. I have a pretty good idea.
Okay, this is bordering on anti-Semitic. Also,
how is that bordering on anti-Semitic?
You're just like, oh, of course it's money. It must be Jews.
No, I'm not saying it's money. It must be Jews. I'm saying who is more likely to have had for the last 100 years,
for sure,
building up legacies at Columbia, where you're going to send your kids and your grandkids to. You're going to keep donating.
But
the libraries are going to keep coming. It's way more likely it's a Jewish person on that endowment list than a Palestinian person.
Yeah, but
that's
also
the only point I'm making.
The amount of it's not like they are stopping people who support Palestine's access to information. That's why these protests are happening, because they said, yeah, we want we want a diverse community here at Columbia. But ultimately,
but then heads started rolling. Like, yeah, we want a diverse community until the dean is gone, until this person's gone.
Yeah.
We're going to cut federal funding.
Yeah, Columbia's a mess. I mean, I wouldn't go there now. But also, like, if, people are protesting something, I'd be like, great, protest. But if I didn't agree with that protest and I needed to get to class, I'm also not paying my tuition that semester. That's not okay. Let's see. For Schumer, and it's just something that it's like I'd have to be there to really assess what's going on here, because the reports coming out of this it's a tale of two cities over here. For Schumer and Jeffries, Khalil's First Amendment rights are seemingly limited by the alleged content of his speech, and this is like if it's just content of speech. Like, again, I've backed many Republican speakers, and I hated when people were saying, like, this person can't speak on the campus. Like, ultimately, I don't know. I just think that you're not giving yourself a proper education if you don't allow people with different viewpoints to speak on the campus. And if you don't want to see them speak, you just don't go see them speak. But they say deportation is out of line. Yeah, I would think so. For Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said this is not about free speech, Khalil is an example of the coming crackdown and reminiscent of the war on terror limits for political thought. I mean, yeah, it's reminding me of when they put Kathy Griffin on the no-fly list for doing the ketchup head picture of Donald Trump. The allegation here is not that he was breaking the law, an unnamed White House official told Bari Weiss's Free Press, but that Khalil is a threat to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States. For me, for him to be a national security threat, he would have to have information that, goes above what an everyday person should have. No? Or mobilizing people in a way that is violent to for a coup or something like that. Reporting in the Forward suggests that the Trump administration may have obtained his name via a targeted campaign on social media by pro-Israel doxing groups like Batar and Canary Mission. Quite possible, and that Colombia, as the owner of the property Khalil lives on, did not stop DHS agents from entering. Colombia has released a statement saying that they did not request the presence of ICE agents on campus and that the agents must have a judicial warrant to enter non-public university buildings. On Wednesday morning, Khalil's attorney, Diala Shamas, said outside a Manhattan courthouse that the legal team was unable even to get a call with their client. A phone call with his lawyers is the bare minimum, and it's what we need to do to simply be able to file papers we need to file to get him back, Shamas said. New York federal judge Jesse Furman said he would order the government to allow Khalil's lawyers to speak with him once on Wednesday and once on Thursday. So far, despite his lawyers' hopes, Khalil remains in Louisiana, where he was sent to a GEO group facility that has reports of previous human rights abuses. Yeah, when I heard they were needed to move him, I go, Smells fishy. Why you moving him around? Don't like that. Fundamentally, everything that's happening to Mahmoud is because of his advocacy for Palestinian rights, Hamas said. Documents obtained by the Washington Post show that the specific provision the U.S. government is trying to invoke against Khalil requires Secretary of State Marco Rubio's personal assertion that the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe that your presence or activities in the United States would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. The government is invoking this. And again, like, it's like, yeah, I mean, there are circumstances where, like, you know, even if you're American born, you can be, you know, deemed a traitor, et cetera, and be a national security threat. So I'm like, please show me proof about this. What was going on here? Because it doesn't seem like we have enough. Or even close to it, really. The government is invoking this very rarely used provision of the Immigration and Nationality Act that they claim allows them to deport people simply because of their political opinions, Hamas said. And that is where we get into very dangerous territory. Khalil's Columbia classmates disbanded their sit-in after 5 hours. That same evening, another large protest marched through Manhattan in support of Khalil, and the following morning he appeared in court. He had still not been accused of any crime. At a briefing Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that this was just the beginning. Khalil said she was present while pro-Hamas propaganda Khalil, she said, was present while pro-Hamas propaganda flyers were distributed, which is not a crime. Yeah, obviously propaganda is not a crime. Every fucking party distributes propaganda. And suggested that the Department of Homeland Security is in possession of a list of further Columbia students to deport. Columbia University, when asked for comment on his case, still has not responded. To me, so far what this is reading like is like, college campus protests have been a national conversation, especially in New York City. We have so many protests when we have so many college campuses. And I think this was, one of the ways in which Donald Trump wanted to swing his dick around and say, no, like, this isn't happening anymore. Oh, this is something that we were like lukewarm about. We're just stopping this once and for all. And so if you notice, the same as with his hiring of Elon Musk, he's using a lot of things. It's almost like he has a lawyer skimming the Constitution and the rules surrounding the presidency and the laws surrounding the presidency to look for these kind of like technically on paper allowed but never used legal moves and using them. Because again, people say we didn't elect Elon Musk. No, we didn't. But the president technically is allowed to appoint, to make an executive appointee the way that he did with Elon Musk. So it's like, no, he wasn't elected, but like technically that was allowed. And then I mean, is he allowed to have all our information? I don't know about that part. But he was allowed to appoint such a person. Just no one else has ever really done it before. All right, let's see. How long is... Okay, this one's pretty short. So this is from the Free Press. This is kind of like the center one because it says both left and right are wrong about Mahmoud Khalil by Jed Rubenfeld. Anyone who says the law is obvious here is not telling the truth. Despite what you may read in the New York Times or on MAGA social media, the Trump administration's planned deportation of Mahmoud Khalil is not an easy case. In fact, it's a maze of statutory and constitutional issues. Khalil, a recent graduate from Columbia University, has played a leading role in the anti-Israel protests there. He is said to be, and also pay attention to whether they call it pro-Palestine or anti-Israel. Whatever it is, that's on purpose. He is said to be the primary spokesperson and negotiator for Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which describes itself as fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization. You're like, don't love that. And again, that's a part of this conversation that's often glossed over. Read all the parts. The group has been the engine behind much of the chaos on Columbia's campus since October 7th, including the encampments and takeover of Hamilton Hall last spring, Barnard's Millbank Hall last month, and Milstein Library just last week, where Khalil allegedly led the occupation efforts. Khalil was suspended from Colombia last spring for his participation in the protests, but the school reversed his suspension the next day. Arrested on March 8th, Khalil is currently being detained in Louisiana. On March 10th, a federal judge in New York stayed his deportation pending a hearing. The administration has not yet definitively stated its legal grounds for deporting Khalil, but a federal statute, the Immigration and Nationality Act, says that aliens, even those who, like Khalil, have green cards, can be deported if they espouse or endorse terrorist activity. It also permits deportation on the basis of an alien's beliefs or statements if the Secretary of State determines that the alien's continued presence here would compromise a compelling United States foreign policy interest. There is certain to be a dispute about whether Khalil is deportable under these provisions, and the case against him could fail out of the gate on statutory grounds. In other words, did he actually endorse or espouse terrorist activities? And again, that's really difficult when the language is that vague. And when, as we have talked about this on this show numerous times, terrorist is in the eye of the beholder. So if the U.S. is making the decision about what is a terrorist activity, to me, in U.S. terms or by U.S. definition, a terrorist would just be anyone who is working against things that are conducive to the United States, most likely earning more money, or having control over its people. Does his continued presence in the country threaten a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest? The White House alleged yesterday that Khalil personally distributed pro-Hamas flyers extolling Operation El Aqsa Flood, the Hamas name for October 7th, which, if true, sounds like a pretty clear endorsement of a terrorist act. And so if it's specifically endorsing October 7th, I would see how Jewish students perhaps would feel uncomfortable. I would hope every student would feel uncomfortable. I don't know. The more fundamental question is whether these statutory provisions are constitutional. And this much is clear. If Khalil has, because then it goes out of free speech and into this, you're trying to actually, provoke violence, right? And so that's different. Then we fall out of free speech. So what is it? Because I'm all up for, he can say whatever he wants to say in the protests and the sit-ins and whatever. That I'm 100% behind him. But then if you're distributing things that are trying to provoke or condone violence against a specific group of people, okay, well, now we're in wonky territory. Also, if you already graduated, why are you hanging out on your college campus so much? To me, that's the fact of this story that's been standing out the most. It's like the cool kid from high school who graduates but then still smokes cigarettes with the people who are still in high school. It's like, Khalil, you have an 8-month pregnant wife at home. What are you doing?
He's a post-grad student, no?
It said he recently graduated, though. So that to me, I mean, he's 30. I assumed he recently graduated from grad school. That part just made me laugh. If Khalil has been arrested solely for espousing or endorsing terrorist acts, his detention would undoubtedly violate the First Amendment if he were a citizen. Political opinion, no matter how abhorrent, is protected speech in America. Yes, it is. Expressing support for even the sickest terrorist butchers like Hamas is protected speech. I wonder how the writer feels. In fact, even if Khalil had committed non-speech, non-protected acts like blocking Jewish students from accessing parts of the Columbia campus, that part's unacceptable. But the true reason for his arrest was because he's pro-Hamas. He would still have a First Amendment retaliation claim if he were a citizen. But he's not a citizen. His green card makes him a lawful permanent resident, but he's still an alien. Thus, the real question is whether or when or to what extent aliens have the same constitutional rights as citizens. Unfortunately for both left and right, the answer is complicated. On the right, people point to the Supreme Court cases like Turner v. Williams from 1904, which upheld the deportation of aliens who express views determined by Congress to be so dangerous to the public weal that aliens who hold and advocate them would be undesirable additions to our population. Indeed, Turner could almost be read to suggest that deportable aliens enjoy little or no constitutional rights at all. Aliens who are excluded by Congress cannot assert the rights in general obtaining in a land to which they do not belong as citizens. And Turner is still cited as good law even today. So very interesting reading if anyone's interested in reading further. But Turner is not close to the end of this story. Only 15 years later in Abrams v. United States, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes handed down one of the most celebrated First Amendment opinions in constitutional history. Abrams had been convicted under a First World War-era sedition statute for distributing anti-war leaflets, and the majority upheld that conviction. Dissenting, Holmes wrote that the defendants had as much right to publish their dissident opinions as the government has to publish the Constitution of the United States, now vainly invoked by them. I am speaking only of expressions of opinion, Holmes added, but I regret that I cannot put into more impressive words my belief that in their conviction upon this indictment, the defendants were deprived of their rights under the Constitution of the United States. What is often forgotten about Abrams is that the defendants in that case were aliens. They were Russian immigrants, not citizens. And in many subsequent cases, the court has not only endorsed Holmes's great Abrams dissent, but expressly held, as in a 1945 case called Bridges v. Wixon, that freedom of speech and of the press is accorded aliens residing in this country. How can this make sense? How can Turner still be good law if aliens are protected by freedom of speech? The answer is that Turner was not addressing lawfully admitted aliens. The case concerned aliens outside the United States and aliens who try to come here illegally. Foreigners outside America have never been held to enjoy constitutional rights, and as the Turner court held, an alien does not become one of the people to whom these rights are secured by our Constitution by an attempt to enter forbidden by law. By contrast, Abrams dealt with aliens who had entered the country lawfully and resided here for 5 to 10 years. Which, like, when you look at this, okay, this makes sense. It's like if you're going to be given the same exact rights and privileges, that you would get if you came here legally versus illegally, why would anyone wait to come here legally? There has to be some incentive, I suppose. And it can't be things like healthcare, because that's just a human right. No matter where you live, you shouldn't be left to die if you're sick. So, and a lot of the reason people come here, as a refugee, I think is because they are in physical danger, but also because they're in political danger, right? Because they can't speak or be themselves or practice their religion or practice, or be the sex or gender or whatever they want to be. They can't be who they want to be, So do we have a clear answer now? Khalil appears to have entered the country legally, so that means he has full constitutional rights? Not so fast. The court has never held that an alien obtains the full panoply. How do I say this word? Panoply? Sorry, I want to look this up. I think I've seen this word before. I haven't. It's panoply? A complete, so obviously it's like pan, so like pansexual, a complete. Panoply. Panoply? Okay, that's how they're saying it. So the full panoply of constitutional rights the moment he is lawfully admitted here. Instead, the court has created a kind of sliding scale in which legal aliens acquire constitutional rights as they develop more substantial connections with this country. Again, it's all very loosey-goosey. Has Khalil developed substantial connections to America? Well, according to his own statements, he has been here less than 2.5 years, having entered on a student visa in December 2022, but he is married to a U.S. citizen, and being a green card holder is usually regarded as the gold standard for substantial connections. In addition, he and his wife are expecting their first baby next month, and their child, even under Trump's birthright citizenship order, will be a U.S. citizen. In short, it's pretty clear that Khalil has substantial connections to America. So does that finally end the matter? Khalil enjoys constitutional rights as a lawful permanent resident, and the First Amendment does not allow people to be punished for expressing their political opinions, no matter how abhorrent. Case closed? No, still not closed, because Khalil's case arises in a distinctive context, deportation. If Khalil were being prosecuted in a criminal case, as Abrams was back in 1919, for example, under a statute prohibiting seditious dissent, his First Amendment rights would be violated and would protect him. But Khalil is not being prosecuted. He is in deportation proceedings. And those who, and this is my problem. This is my main problem, right? Not that he should be prosecuted but he should be going through some sort of a due process, and it does not. What is a deportation? I guess you can argue that a deportation proceeding, it just seems that there should be some kind of going to court in a different way first. All right. And those, if you're a lawyer, call in. And those who support Khalil's deportation will say this makes all the difference because as the Supreme Court held in 1953, courts have long recognized the power to expel or exclude aliens as a fundamental sovereign attribute exercised by the government's political departments largely immune from judicial control. Trump supporters are likely to point in particular to Harrington versus Shaughnessy from 1952, which upheld the deportation of lawful aliens who had been in America for decades but who had once years before been members of the Communist Party. The majority recognized that in many contexts, aliens stand on equal footing with citizens with the same rights. But it's hard because, isn't America, about being it's about being able to believe the things you want to believe. But yes, I agree that it can't endanger other people. That's why I wanted to read this article. Nevertheless, the court held that staying within the country is not an alien's right, but it is a matter of permission and tolerance. The government's power to terminate its hospitality has been asserted and sustained by this court since the question first arose. And the court emphasized that Congress has virtually plenary power on immigration issues. The court made these remarks in connection with a Fifth Amendment due process claim, not a First Amendment claim. We don't know what the court would have said if it had found a First Amendment violation, which the court did not. At the time, prohibiting membership in the Communist Party was not considered a First Amendment violation. Indeed, some have suggested that by denying the First Amendment claim in Harrington, the majority implicitly conceded that aliens cannot be deported for engaging in protected speech. That's debatable, but in any event, today's justices might look for guidance on this issue, less to Harrington's majority, I'm saying that wrong, but I don't know how to say it, it's a name, majority, and more to Justice Frankfurter's clearer and emphatic concurrence in which he wrote, the conditions for entry of every alien, the particular classes of aliens that shall be denied entry altogether, the basis for determining such classification, the right to terminate hospitality to aliens, the grounds on which such determination shall be based, have been recognized as matters solely for the responsibility of the Congress and wholly outside the power of this court to control. In 1977, the court reaffirmed that point, stating this court has repeatedly emphasized that over no conceivable subject is the legislative power of Congress more complete than it is over the admission of aliens. In fact, today's justices might add that when Khalil entered this country in 2022, the statutory provision permitting deportation of aliens for espousing or endorsing terrorist acts was already on the book. It was passed in 2005. In other words, Khalil was on notice that if he chose to come to this country on a student visa, America's hospitality was conditional on his refraining from endorsing terrorist acts. Okay, and I think that's fair if you make that known to people in advance, but you have to 100% clarify what you mean by terrorist act. People can consent to limitations on their constitutional rights when they accept government benefits. Okay, great. By choosing to come to this country and enjoying America's protections and educational system, the argument would go, Khalil accepted the conditions that Congress imposed on him and cannot now try to evade them. So I guess my question then would be, so if you're here on a student visa, do you have to keep a list of the government terrorist list on your wall and make sure that you don't agree with or promote any of their stances? Because people who are deemed terrorists in some countries are not deemed terrorists in other countries. So if you're on a student visa, when they update the terrorist list, are you getting an email? It seems like you should, right? Given these cross-cutting precedents, it is sadly probable that judges' reactions to cases like Khalil's will tend to divide along partisan lines. A good bet is that the Southern District of New York judge currently hearing Khalil's case will, if the case isn't transferred to Louisiana, likely enjoin the administration from deporting him. Another fair bet is that the more conservative judges of the Fifth Circuit, if the case is transferred, will likely uphold the deportation. But anyone who says the law is settled or obvious here is wrong, as is anyone who thinks they know how the Supreme Court will rule. They do like to surprise us there, you know? They do like to surprise us. Michael, your hand is raised. Hello.
Yeah, we have a caller on the line, Steve from Chicago, who's very passionate about Mahmoud's case. You want me to put him through?
I'm guessing he's not a lawyer, but okay.
Well, he's been on the line since before you asked for lawyers.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Steve, can you hear me? Oh, hold on.
I can, yes.
There we go.
Hi, Steve. You're on Without a Country. How can we help you?
Hi, Corinne. So I have a background in political science, international relations. So
Okay.
now I just kind of wanted to lay in. So one thing, yeah. So when you get a international student visa, on the application you affirm that there's a number of conditions that you have to affirm. Those include that you can't be a member of a terrorist organization.
Yep.
I'm actually reading straight from the State Department. You know, it's like you can't be a representative of a terrorist organization, engaged in a political, social, other group that endorses or espouses terrorist activities.
Yep.
Other things like that. The thing about Mahmoud is that he's a spokesman for Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which
right.
They have put out formal statements where they formally supported Hamas, the attacks on October 7th.
Right. Okay.
They had once withdrawn it and actually restated it. So, but it's kind of a larger conversation about national security because there's something known as hybrid warfare, where groups like Hezbollah, the Palestinian Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and Hamas and Samadoun, they fund students to go to Western countries, and they're not going to LIU Post or SUNY Oneonta. They're going to the Ivies because they have this tremendous endowment. They've got $14 billion.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to harm the economy of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to radicalize the future leaders of our social institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, the 9/11 hijackers came through on student visas, Muhammad Atta, all those people. So
Interesting.
It's been this kind of well-known backdoor for a long time.
Yeah, and actually, and what you're describing right
like,
now reminds me. I don't know if you heard me talk a couple weeks ago. It reminds me of the same thing that the far right is doing, where they're basically training social media influencers to continue feeding people on social media their specific viewpoint. It seems really similar to that. So it's not unheard of that a group would do this.
Yeah, but we can't have.
No, I'm not defending them. I'm comparing it because I know a lot of people that listen are. Because I was kind of like I really need to do a lot of reading on this because I'm reading some things and I was like, okay, well, I don't like that he's just like doesn't seem to be going through due process. But then I'm like, I also don't, there also has to be a level of national security, but people are just so set in he's pro Palestine this or anti or pro Israel this and no one is open to having a conversation about what is really going on here. And then, this also feeds into the Democratic Socialists of America that I was speaking about later, because, they're all on board with this.
Steve, though, I just have an issue. I have an issue with something you said. You were talking about him being on a student visa. He's a permanent resident with a green card. So do those student visa rules that he agreed to still apply?
Yes, because if you falsify, like he's been in the U.S. for about, 2 years.
Yeah.
And he's been engaged in these protests almost since the day that he got on the ground. And you can't just be like, okay, on Monday, I'm going to verify that I'm not I don't support and this is important, a state U.S. State Department designated terrorist organization, Hamas, Hezbollah, all those groups since 1997. So we know those groups since 1997 have been designated by, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, So, this is part of a hybrid warfare strategy. The same thing was used in Ukraine in 2014 when Russia decided to weaponize non-governmental organizations and student protest movements in the Donbass and Donetsk to say, it's like, oh, well, let's do voter mobilization and let's have civil society and interest groups. And it was just a front for, intelligence services and non-state actors to be able to, we won't allow Hamas to incorporate a political party in the United States. So they use these proxy groups as a way to accomplish their foreign policy objectives. And their foreign policy objectives is to create social unrest in the United States, to get people and countries to divest from Israeli companies, to harm their economy and accomplish their foreign policy goals for them. So it's something much bigger than just speech, and we can't have a situation where we allow people to weaponize our norms of agreeableness and free discourse and use it as a means to, essentially undo our society's social and educational institutions.
Mm. Yeah, and I think the part that people always just kind of like pass over and stuff is like there's always, when you get deep into these conversations, there's always some little line about the eradication of Western culture or the eradication of Israel, and I go, okay, well, we probably should highlight that part. All right.
But it's really important to just notice, like, I mean, you're not seeing this kind of organically pop up. It's well funded, it's organized.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about with the democratic socialists. These are all planted people. And so it's very interesting that we're seeing it in our actual government too. And I'm not saying I'm not saying the democratic socialists are terrorists, but what I am saying is like, we think these are independent thinkers and leaders. And so now we're seeing a theme even in the context of this show today, where, these are plants. And again, very familiar with plants because it happens all the time in the entertainment business. You think you like that stand-up? Nah, you were trained to like that stand-up. That stand-up sucks.
So just, to finish up, it's like, I mean, there's a reason they're targeting elite institutions. The IBs, and the near IBs and all that stuff like that. It's just like, they go to where the money is. They go to where the future leaders and political influences, so it's not only, all right, we can destroy Israel's economy by getting, these large multi-billion-dollar endowments to divest themselves of Israeli companies, but then when these, there's so many people who come from the Ivy Leagues who end up in Congress and in the U.S. Senate and stuff like that, that these are going to be,
that's another problem.
He was a master's student at SIPA, the School of International and Public Affairs. So, I mean, they're getting into the realm where they're influencing the people who are going to be involved in writing foreign policy for the United States, and they're accomplishing their foreign policy goals through these backdoor channels that are a lot more affordable and a lot more politically palpable, and they're weaponizing our own norms of free speech and agreeableness in ways that we simply cannot tolerate if we want to continue as a free society.
Right, and it's a prime time to get leftists on board because we're so unhappy with the Democratic Party, and so a lot of this is being sold to us as like the most left perspective you can have, and when the left has been flailing like it has been, I think young people especially don't have anything to grasp onto. So this then sounds appealing. That's very interesting. Do you think there's a future? I mean, certainly I could see this with Donald Trump, but is there a future where there are just certain countries that we don't accept student visas from? It seems like that would be heading in that direction. I'm guessing there already are some countries that we don't.
There was actually a bill that was introduced in the U.S. House today. There's over 300,000 Chinese students that come to the U.S. each year. I can tell you that, one of the issues in science, technology, engineering, mathematics is having Chinese students, particularly that we're helping to develop their their military infrastructure, their naval systems, aircraft, weapon systems. But we also, I think it was in 2023, there were 5 Chinese students who were at the University of Michigan who were caught at a military base in Michigan filming training exercises it was the U.S. military and the Taiwanese military. We were doing joint military exercises. And there's just been this kind of stream of, I mean, most people who are of the age that they come to school in the United States, particularly for graduate programs, they have been members of the People's Liberation Army. They've taken military training. So, we're letting, so there is a bill that was actually, it was either yesterday or today that would be devastating to a lot exclusively I know that there's a lot of regional universities that are only still economically afloat because they essentially depend almost exclusively on Chinese students. So, so I think in the future, we've used. There's been a lot of incidents where we've used student visas as a vector to enter the United States and people disappear into the interior. There are going to be visa restrictions, I believe, out of this administration that will prohibit Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, probably Yemen, some of those other countries.
And why are we?
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, this is you're one of the most interesting callers we've ever had on this show. I'm fascinated by this, and this makes I'm like I just kept looking at these articles over the past couple of days, and I was like, there's something I'm missing, and this is a big chunk of that missing piece. And then furthermore, so we're letting people in on these student visas, but what are we doing background checks? Like, I feel like why are we failing? Why aren't we doing more comprehensive background checks on people that things like this can keep happening, especially in a post 9/11 world?
Yeah, I guess it comes to the arrangements. Like Mahmoud, from what I remember, he lived in Palestine. He was born in Algeria. Okay. And his security check came through from the United Kingdom. So we actually depend on a third-party network security agreement and stuff like that. But so I mean, most students come in and they do their degrees and they're quiet and other stuff like that. But there's definitely something about the vetting. But I mean, I don't know if the Biden administration was really all that interested in pursuing it. I think that. When he started doing these type of things, basically in the spring of 2024, that under any other administration, he would have been flagged and deported immediately. It's just, the Columbia University apartheid divest, they bought bags of cement and dumped it in toilets and cost like $400,000 to fix the plumbing system at Columbia SEPA. They spray painted things, they harassed people, they assaulted a couple ones and stuff like that. But I mean, they passed out flyers with Hamas on October 7th and all that stuff. So, it's a question of political will and making it a priority. But and I'm a veteran, and I'm just like, looking as a veteran, looking in on this and just being like, what the hell are we doing? It's like, we have these people, saying that they want to destroy Western civilization and that they want to, kill the Jews and all this other stuff like that. And we're just like, oh, well, these people have just all the same rights. And I mean, citizenship carries responsibility. And, the idea that you could just come here and a couple of weeks later or a year later that suddenly you're fully invested in the American experience and that you've committed to our values of democracy and pluralism and all that stuff like that. It's kind of an absurd thing. And if we don't stop it, when the next 9/11 happens or the next, the first dirty bomb or other sort of thing like that, it'll probably be somebody on a student visa, to be honest.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to. I'm gonna read more
Yeah.
on this, but I'm like, thank you so much because I was just like, I didn't want to be silent on something, but I just go, I know I'm missing something, and then I saw something in Interview magazine today, and it just didn't feel. It felt like he was like being too swiftly removed without due process, and I'm like, these are the pieces of information that I was missing because I go, I don't know what's going on here. And of course, everyone immediately picks a side and I go, how much did you guys actually read about this? And where did you read about it? Like what sources did you read about it in? And everyone's immediately to the streets and I go, okay, but what's going on here? I just feel like everyone's just is so eager to pick a side and to like be an activist for something that they think aligns with these other viewpoints they have, that they're not really looking into all the information.
This one's alarming to me, though.
Well, that's why with the like the deportation, and I'm going, well, no matter what he's doing, he should, he still should be going through some kind of a court process, was my thought, right? Even if I think, even if I thought that he was trying to, cause violence on the campus. I was just like, but this, I feel like this gave a lot more information and pieces that these, journalists themselves didn't, we didn't get to Fox yet, but I don't know. I doubt Fox is going to wow me, but we'll see. Maybe today's the day.
Well, I'm just like the Fox angle is what's most concerning to me because it's like, I always talk about Fox News mom, and in this case, it's my mother-in-law. And she came over before I left for the show last week. And I said, yo, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. Trump talking about taking away federal funding from these campuses that allow protests.
Right.
Dating back, like as somebody, for her, somebody who grew up in the 60s.
Of course, this is where you learn how to protest.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's like for this person to be like,
yeah,
you really think students shouldn't be allowed to protest? And she hit me with the like, okay, that's a good point. And then 4 days later, I'm talking to her, and she's just been on a steady Fox News diet for all 4 of those days, and it is now a complete smear campaign on this kid to get everyone rallied around, like, the we need to stop these peaceful or whatever these protests are. We need to stop them. And it's just alarming to me how quickly people got on board with it.
Right. I mean, we've just seen enough footage, though, from Colombia to know that, like, the thing, like I said, the things that really bothered me was when they're, like, locking janitors in hallways and stuff and, like, stopping people from accessing places that they should freely be allowed to go. Like, that's where we're getting into wonky territory. That you're like, okay, well, this is physically harmful to other people.
Fair, but the blanket statement to say if you guys allow protests on your campus, you don't get federal funding, that's crazy.
No, I know, but the thing is, if he's if he was then handing out flyers that were like pro October 7th, then you're going into promoting violence, which is not protected by free speech, and we've talked about that on the show numerous times before. Even going back to I've been a Jew here many times defending like the KKK's right to meet. They can meet, but they can't do anything else. They can sit around and talk about how much they hate Jews or black people. Sure, can't do anything about it though. Got to stop there. Sorry, is Steve still on the line? He's just listening to us.
No,
chat.
No.
I wanted to say thank you to him. But yeah, that was a very, very interesting call. When he said he actually had a degree in something related to politics, I go, yeah, we finally got an educated person on the show. My BFA in filmmaking doesn't have to get us through this show any longer. That being said, look at me. I mean, I was able to predict what was happening. And it happened today, and I didn't even see about it. And I said, I know. I said, they're going to start pulling student visas. I know exactly what's going to be happening. I know how this game is played. All right, let's go real quick to the right, just because it'll be a short night, and I wanted to go through this whole thing. Just I really, this story to me is so interesting. And I was like really racking my brain, like looking through things today, and I was like, I want to be able to support this, but there was something in my mind that was like, to support him, to be like, why is he going through deportment proceedings? But there just was something that just kept nagging at me that was like, there's a piece fucking missing here, and I don't know what it is.
I have an idea.
What is it?
That you just cannot comment on Israel.
What do you mean I can't comment on Israel?
No. I'm saying,
you
like,
mean the
as
people
a
are
person.
punished for? But I don't.
Four people got shot over protesting Vietnam.
I think that.
How many people's lives have been ruined protesting Israel?
Yeah, but I think I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. How angry people have gotten on both sides over this. And it's not, but the thing is, it's like, I have no problem with people who want to talk about how they think Israel, is bad. And I think there's a lot of things financially that red flags should be raised with America's relationship with Israel, especially financially, right? I think Benjamin Netanyahu's out of his mind. So do many other people who live in Israel. But that doesn't mean that I think Hamas is good. I don't think that. I don't think Hamas is good for the people of Palestine. Okay. So this says, who is Mahmoud Khalil, the anti-Israel Columbia University activist, ICE arrested? And if you noticed, in Mother Jones, they described him as pro-Palestine, and then in Free Press, and here they're describing him as anti-Israel. So again, same thing. It's just like saying, are you anti-choice? Are you pro-life? It's the same kind of language that's wants to push your mind in a certain direction. So this is from Fox News. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, Trump said. President Donald Trump announced Monday that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents arrested anti-Israel activist Mahmoud Khalil and cautioned that other terrorist sympathizers would meet a similar fate. ICE agents arrested Khalil, I would like a list of people that we support in the U.S. who are considered terrorists in other countries. I think that would be a really interesting episode. ICE agents arrested Khalil, who is a Palestinian raised in Syria and a permanent U.S. resident, from his university-owned apartment on the city's Upper West Side Saturday, and told him that they were revoking his green card and student visa, according to Khalil's attorney, Amy Greer. The Department of Homeland Security said in an ex post that it conducted the arrest to protect U.S. national security and claimed that Khalil led activities aligned to Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. I also want to point out that I have had all these things sus about Mahmoud that had nothing to do with actually Israel or Palestine, and it had all to do with like his personal choices. So like, number one, hanging around on a college campus a lot after you have graduated. That was number one thing. And then
I found out, by the way, he graduated in December. Or he finished the requirements for his master's degree in December.
Right. It's March, baby. It's a new year. Do you? And then additionally, the fact that he was already he's married to the woman that's pregnant, because I was like, he's already married and with child within 2 years, and he's only 30. That also I found to be sus. That to me was like, okay, that's a little weird.
You're that anti-family.
I'm not. No, Mike, you're like so pro-family. It's just like, it's like, that's a lot to get done and a big commitment to make while you're also finishing a grad program. It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's
almost like you need that level of dedication to get into Columbia's master's program.
Yeah, but if you're that dedicated to the master's program, how can you also be dedicated to falling in love with someone and starting a family? You very rarely do all that at once. Anyway, this is just my personal assessment. That's my guys we fucked brain. Anyway, Khalil played a major role in the protests against Israel at Columbia University and met with university officials on behalf of Columbia University Apartheid Divest, a group of student groups urging the university to divest from Israel, according to CNN. And I wonder if we go to like that group's website, do they have one? They're not going to put the real thoughts, though. The real thoughts are all on like a private Substack somewhere. All right, so you can go to their Instagram. So in the Columbia Spectator, which is the student news source. It says Columbia University Apartheid Divest, Who We Are. Columbia University Apartheid Divest is a coalition of student organizations that see Palestine as the vanguard for our collective liberation. We are a continuation of the Vietnam anti-war movement, Michael, and the movement to divest from apartheid South Africa. We support freedom and justice for the Palestinian people and for all people. Okay. We know that true collective safety will arise when everyone has access to clean air, clean water, food, housing, education, healthcare, freedom of movement, and dignity. And then it goes on to talk more about Israel bombing places and stuff. Okay. So my follow-up question would be, if you believe in freedom of all people, do you believe in the freedom of Israel to exist and the Israeli people to exist amongst the Palestinian people? That's like, I feel just like, I'm like, what's the rest of the information here?
Well, when you look at a map around Israel and you look at American interventions in the Middle East since Israel's creation, and you see that the United States, the most powerful army on the planet, has attacked every single one of Israel's neighbors since its creation in the 1940s, it's questionable, right, whether or not Israel can in fact coexist with any of these people.
Yeah. I mean, like I've been there. They're not coexisting really. They hate each other.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know. And at that point, are we just saying, yes, we have made a clear stance to choose the lives of the Israelis over?
Why don't we just move Israel to another state that we don't need? Montana? There's a lot of room there. I think Montana might be the state with the most room left.
I'm good with Canada.
Well, we don't own Canada
yet.
Oh God! Oh no, Greenland becomes Israel. The group's main goal is to challenge the settler colonial violence that Israel perpetrates with the support of the United States and its allies, according to an op-ed published in the Columbia Spectator in November 2023. We reject the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency's weaponizing of the United States racist immigration laws to prevent our international comrades and peers from speaking up, the group wrote. We reject the violence of the Israel Defense Forces trained police industrial complex that chokes our communities and disproportionately enacts brutality against people of color. Khalil's LinkedIn profile says he studied computer science at the Lebanese American University in Beirut before starting his master's degree at Columbia in public administration in January 2023. His profile says he graduated in December 2024, although Columbia's media affairs would not confirm Khalil's status at the university to Fox News Digital. Other work experience listed on Khalil's LinkedIn profile includes completing an internship with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, which assists Palestinian refugees and descendants. UNRWA has faced scrutiny after a UN investigation found that UNRWA employees may have been involved in Palestinian militant group Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023. The U.S. temporarily halted funding for UNRWA in January 2024, which would have been Biden administration, in response to the report. The Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and State Department are investigating Khalil as a possible national security threat, according to White House officials. The investigation so far has unearthed anti-Semitic and hateful posts on Khalil's social media. Well, I mean, we knew he was obviously going to be anti-Semitic, but you're allowed to be anti-Semitic. I'm not going to be friends with you, but you're allowed, in theory, to remain in America and be anti-Semitic. You just can't act on it.
Also, hold on. This is Fox News' definition of anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah, that's what my main thing through all this is I would like to see what this is, and whatever. But yeah, again, I feel like he just doesn't love Jews, but that's okay.
Yeah, but it's
okay.
Criticizing Israel's foreign policy is not anti-Semitism on its face.
Yeah, no,
I'm telling you,
yes, I understand that.
I've watched people questioning Israel's, morality.
Be called anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitism,
for
time
sure.
and time again.
But there's also a line that I've seen a lot in these protests where it gets so aggressive towards Jews and the Star of David and stuff, obviously, which is on the flag of Israel, that it's we're in really wonky territory here, and if this was about any other group, it would be treated much more seriously.
If it was
by by leftist people. People just don't care. The people just think, they look white, that no one gives a shit on the left about Jews. That's how listen, I've lived in New York for 20 years. I've never seen anti-Semitism. And I'm not saying you can be anti-Israel. It's a different thing. Israel's its own different thing. It has nothing to do with American Jews. I mean, it has to do with some American Jews, but not all of us. Being Israeli is a completely different thing. And determined, he organized multiple anti-Semitic protests on Columbia's campus, according to the officials. Again, it's I need more information. Even so, Khalil previously has made public statements backing the liberation of both the Palestinian and Jewish people and spoken out against anti-Semitism. Okay. There is, of course, no place for anti-Semitism. I mean, I feel like you got to say that. Khalil told CNN in April 2024, what we are witnessing is anti-Palestinian sentiment that's taking different forms, and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism are some of these forms. Trump unveiled Khalil's arrest Monday, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the administration would revoke the green cards of any Hamas supporters in the U.S. and deport them. Following my previously signed executive orders, ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. Yeah, the pro-Hamas always is interesting to me because I just don't, I don't think Hamas is good for anyone. This is the first, unless you want to eradicate Western culture, then they're great for you. This is the first arrest of many to come. We will find, but I certainly don't think they did right by the Palestinian people. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorists.
They're a straw man who was built up by Netanyahu. Anyone who supports them
we know
is
what you
supporting.
Think. We know what you think.
We documented on this show
the
funding that Netanyahu
I know what you
them.
think. I know, but there are so many people who are pro-Palestine, but then pro-Hamas, and I go, to me, if you're pro-Palestine, you got to be anti-Hamas.
True.
We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our, because there's what happened in Gaza is disgusting. It was a genocide, and so that's part of my anger towards Hamas is because of that. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, never to return again, Trump stated. If you support terrorism, including the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, your presence is contrary to our national and foreign policy interests, and you are not welcome here. In response, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee labeled the move as straight-up authoritarianism in a post on X. Additionally, Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat Michigan, Democratic Socialist, spearheaded a letter to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, urging the Trump administration to release Khalil immediately. Tlaib is the first Palestinian-American woman to serve in Congress. Khalil has not been charged or convicted of any crime. Tlaib and other Democratic lawmakers wrote in a letter released Tuesday, "We must be extremely clear. This is an attempt to criminalize political protest and is a direct assault on the freedom of speech of everyone in this country." Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the Trump administration's decision to arrest Khalil and claimed that he distributed pro-Hamas propaganda flyers on campus. This administration is not going to tolerate individuals having the privilege of studying in our country and then siding with pro-terrorist organizations that have killed Americans. So are you also not siding with the Food and Drug Administration? Are you not siding with Pfizer? A lot of organizations have killed Americans. Leavitt told reporters Tuesday at a White House press briefing, noting that on her desk were the pro-Hamas propaganda flyers with the logo of Hamas. Show them to us on them that Khalil allegedly was distributing. We have a zero tolerance policy for siding with terrorists, period. Hard stance, but sometimes you gotta do what's right. She also defended Rubio's right to revoke Khalil's green card. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke a green card or a visa for individuals who serve or are adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States of America, Leavitt said Tuesday. Khalil is being held at a detention facility in central Louisiana. However, a federal judge in New York blocked the Trump administration from deporting him while legal proceedings remain active. District Judge Jesse Furman from the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York is slated to hear Khalil's case Wednesday. His attorneys have filed motions asserting that ICE violated Khalil's constitutional rights and are also requesting his return to New York. Khalil's wife is currently 8 months pregnant, according to his lawyer. We will vigorously be pursuing Mahmoud's rights in court and will continue our efforts to right this terrible and an inexcusable and calculated wrong committed against him, Greer said. I just hate that they keep bringing up the pregnant wife because I'm like, okay, like the conversation here is did he or did he not do something wrong, not whether or not your wife is pregnant. You can't commit a crime and then be like, but my wife is pregnant. Like, just stay on fucking topic and stop trying to play with our emotions here. All right, let's see. And then last up is Eric Adams. So like I'm not gonna read the whole article, but AM New York reported. So basically, Mayor Eric Adams got upset because everyone has been out, on the streets protesting in defense and in support of Mahmoud Khalil. And Eric Adams is mad that we didn't support his corruption case in the same way, his Justice Department legal filing. And he's just going completely off book. This guy's he's wild right now. He goes, this is a quote from him. He goes, "What I'm finding surprising is the level of support you're all displaying," Adams said to reporters about asking about his stance on Khalil's arrest. "But I didn't see that support for me, even after we saw the emails and text messages that there's a potential that it's politically motivated," Adams said. "So if you're about justice, don't be inconsistent in your call for justice. Cover those text messages that shows that it was potentially politically motivated." And I go, oh my God. Eric Adams, you are grasping at straws, my guy. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. So I think we have two stories. We'll do two girls. Oh, I didn't even do an enemy of the state this week, but I think the enemy of the state should be, who is the enemy of the state this week? I don't even know who I would say. I mean, who do you have a nominee for enemy of the state? No one popped out at me this week.
I mean, my guy's Marco Rubio.
Because of the Mahmoud Khalil situation?
Yes, I think that protests, regardless of your feelings on it, should be allowed in America.
Well, I agree with that too, but not if you're distributing flyers that say that Jews should be killed. So show me the flyer, because I 100% agree with you. All right, well, enemy of the state is, I guess, ourselves. All right, let's see. So, okay, this was interesting. So, WAPO Sam sent this article to me, but I also saw it because I follow so many capital punishment accounts and stuff like that. So anytime someone is executed in America, I'm all over that shit and just constantly disgusted. But Sam, you sent me an article from the Associated Press, and it says South Carolina Supreme Court rejects man's final appeal, clearing way for firing squad execution. I don't know if you guys kept tabs on this. I read another article that said that he was given the choice of electric chair, lethal injection, or firing squad, and that he himself chose firing squad, because there was a lot of conversation about the problems with lethal injection. Because obviously when you're given the choice of those three, you go lethal injection, and you go, why didn't he go lethal injection? Well, then you look into it further and you go, there was a lot of issues with what South Carolina was using to lethally inject. And basically, I'm guessing it wasn't working properly. And that's a risk you don't want to take. And so then if you knock out lethal injection, it's between electric chair and firing squad. I agree. You go firing squad. All right, so this is by Jeffrey Collins. The South Carolina Supreme Court has rejected what is likely the final appeal of condemned man Brad Sigmund, clearing the way for Friday's firing squad execution. Okay, I didn't realize you had sent me this. This has already been done. Let me get a more up-to-date article.
Yeah, this happened last week.
Yeah. Well, no, I know, because I'm like, he's dead. So let me, Sigmund, South Carolina. I want to get a more, and just so we know, he's, people are like, you don't even talk about the crimes he did. Okay, so Brad Sigmund was an American convicted murderer who was executed for the 2001 double murder of his ex-girlfriend's parents in South Carolina. Just so we're aware of what he's going down for. Slate has an article called "We're Really Doing Execution by Firing Squad Again," which just feels a little too, I don't know, colloquial for what happened. It just feels like top 5 outfits to wear to your firing squad execution. Just like maybe doesn't have to be in that language. Like it's still barbaric that we're doing this. All right, this is too much information. I don't want this. So corrections1.com, maybe we'll take it from there. As South Carolina carries out first U.S. firing squad execution in 15 years. A South Carolina man who killed his ex-girlfriend's parents with a baseball bat was executed by firing squad Friday, the first U.S. prisoner in 15 years to die by that method, which he saw as preferable to the electric chair or lethal injection. 3 volunteer Broad River Correctional Institution employees, and again, we've talked ad nauseum about the mental health care and attention that people who have to be a part of people's capital punishment. We watched a while ago a documentary about that. Used rifles to carry out the execution of Brad Sigmund, 67, who was pronounced dead at 6:08 p.m. Sigmund killed David and Gladys Lark in their Greenville County home in 2001 in a botched plot to kidnap their daughter. He told police he planned to take her for a romantic weekend, then kill her and himself. Okay. Sigmund's lawyers said he chose the firing squad because...
Who said chivalry is dead?
Right? Okay. Brad Sigmund, he's dead. Sigmund's lawyers said he chose the firing squad because the electric chair would cook him alive. I don't disagree. And he feared that a lethal injection of pentobarbital into his veins would send a rush of fluid and blood into his lungs and drown him. Yeah. The details of South Carolina's legal injection method are kept secret in South Carolina. And Sigmund unsuccessfully asked the state Supreme Court on Thursday to pause his execution because of that. On Friday, Sigmund wore a black jumpsuit with a hood over his head and a white target with a red bullseye over his chest. Just picture this in your mind, right? I make no argument that what he did to his ex-girlfriend's parents were horrific. I make no argument. But is this the solution? I just don't think that it is. I don't think that capital punishment belongs in a civilized world, and it does not belong anywhere. I just have always been against capital punishment. The armed prison employees stood 15 for so many reasons. For the armed prison employees stood 15 feet from where he sat in the state's death chamber. Other people have to observe his death. They don't need that trauma in their life. The same distance as the backboard is from the free throw line on a basketball court. That's pretty close. Visible in the same small room was the state's unused electric chair. The gurney used to carry out lethal injections had been rolled away. The volunteers all fired at the same time through openings in a wall. They were not visible to about a dozen witnesses in a room separated from the chamber by bullet-resistant glass. A lot of questions for people who want to witness capital punishment. Sigmund made several heavy...
Bullet-resistant glass, too, is a little... That scares me. It doesn't say bulletproof glass. Bullet-resistant. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess they don't want to make any guarantees,
It's like taking your G-Shock, down 1,500 meters or whatever.
Sigmund made several heavy breaths during the 2 minutes that elapsed from when the hood was placed to the shots being fired. They should have done that faster. That's a long time to make someone wait. The shots, which sounded like they were fired at the same time, made a loud, jarring bang that caused witnesses to flinch. His arms briefly tensed when he was shot, and the target was blasted off his chest. He appeared to give another breath or two with a red stain on his... this is horrific. And small amounts of tissue could be seen from the wound during those breaths. A doctor came out about a minute later and examined Sigmund for 90 seconds before declaring him dead. Witnesses included 3 family members of the Larks. And again, I've experienced a lot of death in my life. And not, murder, knock on wood. But I can't imagine finding any solace in seeing even someone who brutally murdered someone I love being killed in front of me. I really just can't see that bringing me any peace. And I think I'd be really interested to interview a family member who witnessed, like one of these people. I'd truly be so interested to see if it brought them peace. And if it did, how so? I'm really and truly with no judgment, I would want to hear how that brought them peace. Something so lacking in peace brought them peace. Also present were Sigmund's attorney and spiritual advisor. I hope he had a tarot card reader, a representative from the prosecuting solicitor's office, a sheriff's investigator, and 3 members of the news media. Sigmund's lawyer read a closing statement that he said was one of love and a calling to my fellow Christians to help us end the death penalty. Prison spokeswoman Christy Shane said Sigmund's last meal was 4 pieces of fried chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes with gravy, biscuits, cheesecake, and a sweet tea. That could have killed me alone. The firing squad is an execution method with a long and violent history in the U.S. and around the world. Death in a hail of bullets has been used to punish mutinies and desertion in armies, as frontier justice in America's Old West, and as a tool of terror and political repression in the former Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. Since 1977, only 3 other prisoners in the U.S. have been executed by firing squad. All were in Utah, most recently Ronnie Lee Gardner in 2010. Another Utah man, Ralph Menzies, could be next. He is awaiting the result of a hearing in which his lawyers argued that his dementia makes him unfit for execution. Fucking Jesus. In South Carolina on Friday, a group of protesters holding signs with messages such as all life is precious and execute justice, not people, gathered outside the prison before Sigmund's execution. Supporters and lawyers for Sigmund asked Republican Governor Henry McMaster to commute his sentence to life in prison. They said he was a model prisoner trusted by guards and worked every day to atone for the killings, and also that he committed the killings after succumbing to severe mental illness. But McMaster denied the clemency plea. No governor has ever commuted a death sentence in the state, where 46 other prisoners have been executed since the death penalty resumed in the U.S. in 1976. 7 have died in the electric chair and 39 others by lethal injection. In the early 2000s, South Carolina was among the busiest death penalty states, put that on a license plate, carrying out an average of 3 I was just like laughing at thinking about that. Jesus, this is barbaric. Carrying out an average of 3 executions a year. But officials suspended executions for 13 years, in part because they were unable to obtain lethal injection drugs. The state Supreme Court cleared the way to resume them in July. Freddie Owens was the first to be put to death on September 20th after McMaster denied him clemency. Richard Moore was executed on November 1st and Marion Bowman Jr. on January 31st. Going forward, the court will allow an execution every 5 weeks. Mark your calendars. South Carolina now has 28 inmates on its death row. That's a lot of inmates to have on death row, including 2 who have exhausted their appeals and are awaiting execution, most likely this spring. Just 1 man has been added to death row in the past decade. Before executions were paused, more than 60 people faced death sentences. Many of those have either had their sentences reduced to life in prison or died in prison. All right. Well, I think what a beautiful ending to our show. What a nice glimpse into what America is all about. Yeah. That's our show for today. We didn't even get to the Department of Education layoffs, but to be continued. We'll keep following that. Thank you so much for joining me. I really look forward to this show every week. It's interesting when talking about someone getting killed by a firing squad is your respite from the rest of the horrors of the world. But, so it is. Again, the deadline, if you're watching this now on Wednesday for this next financial disclosure report, is tomorrow, Thursday, March 13th at midnight Eastern time. So if you can make a donation before then, especially if you haven't already, I would very much appreciate it. If you haven't donated since back in January, please, I don't want to I really appreciate it. But if you're able to match your donation now for March that you made back in January, or, do 50% of what you did in January, that would be super, super appreciated and needed. And again, it's all going, it all has immediate impact on the camp. This money is not sitting in an account. It's immediately going to pay our staff. and expand Corinne Fisher for mayor. And I'm really, really excited about that. So thank you so much for your support. If you want to get one exclusive news story a week, head over to patreon.com/withoutatcountry, and you get a whole new, piece of this show every week with a unique story. Follow me at Corinne Fisher for Mayor on Instagram, Philanthropy Gal and everything else, and at Corinne Fisher on Blue Sky, because Blue Sky is back, baby. Follow Mike at Them Harrington. And do you have any shows that you want to promote?
Yes, I have April 5th at Fifth Company Brewing in Perryville, Maryland. KP Burke headlining, Chris Vega and Rami Rosner also going to be on the show. And then the 20th at New York Comedy Club, East 4th Street. I have an incredible anxiety attack for you guys. Come on out.
Amazing. And if you want to sign this petition or volunteer to work with us to get petitions signed, head over to CorinneFisher.com, sign out, volunteer. And then on social media, I'll also be posting, if you just want to sign, where everyone will be at this weekend and over the next few days, because during the week we have people placed in like markets and lunch rush type places all the time. We usually got people in Washington Square Park. There's a lot of people out there. If you want to email me, it's without a country podcast, right? I forgot my own email address, withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. And again, thank you so much for engaging in critical thinking with me and discussion. It's so needed at this time. And remember to, make sure you're registered to vote and look what's happening on the municipal level in your town or city. Thank you so much. Peace.